Just like a lot of YouTubers, I got a free X-CARVE from Inventables.com just to give my honest review. Well, it took a while to put together, but I finally finished it and even made my first carve. Stay tuned to find out more. Now, it's advertised to be easier to put together than the SHAPEOKO, and there are definitely some improvements, but it's still going to take you a while. I've already assembled the SHAPEOKO, so I kind of knew what I was getting into, and I still screwed several things up and had to go back and fix it. So overall, I worked about an hour a night over a period of time, and it took me a good 8 to 10 hours to put this thing together. It's going to take a while, so don't think you're going to do this quickly. Take your time, read the instructions, do it right. You'll be a lot happier if you do. I'll run through just some of the improvements that they've made on this over the SHAPEOKO. One of them is obviously this large build area. Now, you could get a larger SHAPEOKO, but it's the large build area with threaded inserts from underneath. So each of these holes can accept a bolt like this for the clamps. So I can clamp just about anything down in this, and the bigger one does like a 30 by 30, actually I think slightly bigger than that, 30 by 30 build area. So that's huge. Another improvement they made is the electronics. First off, they have these chains that contain the wires on both the side over here and on top for the gantry. So they move with it and keep the wires all intact. So that's really, really great. Another thing they did is they tied the spindle in through the electronics. So now through easel, their easel software, you can turn the spindle on and off and control it automatically. That was a separate add-on thing in the SHAPEOKO that I did a previous video about. It's now built in, so that's a really, really nice feature. They've also improved the case, the mounting. Before, the Arduino and all that was just kind of sitting there. I ended up 3D printing a mount that went on the side on the SHAPEOKO. Now it's got its metallized case with a fan on top to cool the shield. So that's really helpful because that shield can get hot. Another thing they improved was the belts. They now have a tensioner on each belt, the two on the sides and the one up here in the gantry. So you loosen a nut and then you adjust this adjustable screw, which then pulls the belt. Now I've got this one over crank, so I've actually got to reposition this one, but it's tight right now. So after I cut a little bit, it's probably going to stretch. I can then go back and adjust this. In the old SHAPEOKO, you had to loosen that screw and pull it and then quickly tighten it. So this is definitely an improvement. I don't think it's perfect. You still have to tighten a separate screw, but it's an improvement over what the SHAPEOKO had. Another improvement is just the overall look of this thing. It's got the nice black anodized aluminum, and it's throughout. It's not a mixture. Like the SHAPEOKO had some silver, some black. This just looks nice and clean. So looks-wise, it's just a better looking machine. Now, having said that, there's a few things that aren't as advertised. One of them is they advertise when you put it together, it comes with self-tapping screws. Now, they may have taken that advertisement off, but I first looked at it, that's what it said. And one of the biggest pains of the SHAPEOKO was tapping these rails to accept the screws. And when I got this out, I didn't find any self-tapping screws. In fact, what I found was a tap was included. So you still have to tap the holes. And the trick there, use your drill. I put the tap inside it. You just run the drill a little bit, then reverse it, back it off. Run it in a little deeper, back it off. And that makes it go a lot easier, and you get nice clean cuts. So when you do that, also use a little oil, like a WD-40 or any kind of lubricant oil to make it easier for that bit to cut. And I found that the rails here, I don't know if it's a different type of aluminum or what, but they seem to cut easier than I remember on the SHAPEOKO. So I don't know, it was definitely easier. But that's, just recognize it doesn't have self-tapping screws. You've got to tap these rails. Another thing that I liked better on the SHAPEOKO versus this is the spindle mount. On the SHAPEOKO, there's a plate, and then the spindle mount bolted to that plate. So I was able to 3D print several different mounts because I actually burned out the Dremel that came with it. And then I got from Inventables, they sent me the quiet cut spindle, which is still on that machine. And I was able to 3D print mounts to put it on the SHAPEOKO. Well, here it's one continuous piece. Now they make a plate now that has holes in it so you can mount to it, so I'm probably going to get that plate. But just recognize that you can't change this. You got to go with this bracket here to install the spindle. Otherwise you got to take this whole thing off, including the idler wheels that go on the Z-axis. So that's something I'm not real fond of, but it looks like they're making some changes that they offer an alternative. And then now they've got clamps for other spindles, like Dewalt router you can put on it, or several other different routers instead of their own spindles. If you do that, you don't have the control anymore through the electronics, but you do have a much more powerful router at that point. One other thing that I noticed that hasn't been an issue on the SHAPEOKO, and I don't know if it's going to be an issue here, but it's the height of this gantry. Let me show you. If you look at the height of this versus the height of the SHAPEOKO, I've got more space underneath than I do here. Here it's about 4 inches. Here it's about 3. So, and this actually has double boards on the base, so I've actually got a little more space here, and it's mainly because these plates are taller. So if you want to do some real thick boards on this, the X-CARVE took away some of that space. So I kind of wish this was a little bit taller, because it's definitely bigger, but I wish it was taller so I could do some thicker stuff. Now, not only was Inventables.com generous enough to give me one of these to evaluate and let me keep it, which is awesome because I'm going to use it in future videos, but they also let me pick out a few features, additions, that I've learned from my SHAPEOKO that I wanted on this new machine. And one of them was larger motors. I wanted the NEMA 23 motors on this because this runs on G-code the same as a 3D printer. The difference is a 3D printer has no resistance, it's just putting that plastic down. Where this has got constant resistance because it's cutting through the material. So you want the stronger motor to be able to plow through whatever it's working on. And the smaller motors really just don't cut it. The NEMA 17s that are on the SHAPEOKO, and I think come stock even on the X-CARVE, are the same motors that are in most 3D printers. You want the better motors. I know it costs a little more, but if you're going to get one of these, get the better motors. It makes a huge difference. I've already seen it in how well it works compared to the SHAPEOKO. Another thing that I got was the homing switches. So it's got a switch on the Z, X, and Y axis. So when I hit the home button, this thing will move itself all the way to home automatically and then stop. So that's a nice feature. I don't know if it's as big a deal as it would be like on a 3D printer, because a 3D printer will automatically take itself home when it's done. In X-CARVE, you set the home position before you start. So I don't know if it's that big a deal of an addition, but I liked it. I liked having it. It was extra wires, extra soldering, but I'm glad I got it. So this is actually my first carve that I did on the X-CARVE. And I know a lot of people, I've watched other YouTube videos, they had multiple tries and failures. Having the SHAPEOKO and having used easel before, I think it was a little easier for me. One thing I did notice is there's two different rods you can get. This is the Acme rod, and then there's an M8 rod, which is a different pitch. And you have to set up the machine. Now, in the old SHAPEOKO, you had to go into the Universal G-code sender and change some settings. They've made that easier in easel, that you just go through a setup menu, just a few steps, and it'll automatically update those settings in the G-code sender, which is underneath easel. So I kind of screwed up and I said the wrong shaft, and I noticed that when I moved the Z-axis, it was moving more than I was telling it. Like, I told it to move 0.2 millimeters, it moved 2 millimeters. So I actually went back and figured out that I had the wrong settings, just went through that setup menu again, and everything was good. So I didn't, get any bad cuts because of that. But just to be safe, I just used a crappy piece of plywood, and this thing cut it out pretty nice. I mean, the edges are kind of rough because the wood just kind of was splitting, but it cut this out in a short period of time, and there was no hesitation because of the motors. It did a beautiful job. So I was really pleased with my first cut, and now I'm excited to do more with it. So overall, I think this is a definite improvement over the SHAPEOKO. There's always room for improvement, but this is a very well designed CNC machine. Now this machine, as it's equipped here with all the additions, is about $1,250 plus shipping. So figure with shipping, you're looking at about $1,350, around that ballpark. That's still a decent price. If you go look at Rockler, Woodworking, or any of these other woodworking type websites that they sell CNC machines, you can't touch one for under $3,000. Now that's fully assembled, so how much this would be fully assembled, I don't know, and I tell you what, that'd be a nice option. I wish Inventables would consider doing that, or find some third party, whatever, that would assemble them for them. It may make it a little harder to ship, but that is one thing I think would sell more of these, is if it wasn't a kit, if it was fully assembled. I know when I look at 3D printers, I don't even want to look at a kit anymore. I'll only consider fully assembled machines because I just don't want to deal with a kit. And this was a great example. I spent so many nights where I had to come out here and put this together, and then I made some mistakes and I had to undo what I did. It was pretty frustrating, and there were many nights I walked away from it. So that's why it probably took longer to do this one than the SHAPEOKO, because I was expecting us to go quicker with more experience, and it kind of didn't. So overall though, this is a great machine, and I can highly recommend it. And I'm not saying that because they gave me a machine. I mean, I can highly recommend it. In fact, my son has been using that SHAPEOKO so much, I'm actually going to give him the machine. He started playing with them. I showed him easel. He's got some projects he's been cutting out of plastic and a few other rubberized materials, and he's got it tuned in to where I can't even hardly touch it anymore because I mess up his settings. So it's nice that I now have my own bigger one, and he's going to have the smaller one. So that one's probably going to leave my shop. So I love it. I love it. I look forward to do more with this machine. I'm considering starting another segment on my channel, where I'm going to call it CNC Sundays. So every Sunday or every other Sunday, I'm not sure how often I can do it, I want to do some kind of CNC video. And I got projects that I want to do with this thing. So if you think this is a good idea, a CNC Sunday, and you're interested in that, let me know in the comments below. But anyway, that's all I've got for now. Please stay tuned for more with CNC, and definitely come back for Filament Friday. So I'll see you next time.